Welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm Ollie Hayes, and today I'm bringing the player ratings for Everton nil, Tottenham Hotspur 3 at Hill Dickinson Stadium. A pretty dismal display by Everton all round. But let's get straight into it with today's player ratings. I'm not going to lie, even though the dust has settled, I'm still pretty annoyed with how we played from start to finish against Tottenham. But we'll start in goal with Jordan Pickford. I'm going to give him a 6. He was one of the better performers for me. I think his distribution was quite good. He made a good save to deny Richarlison. And for the goals, there's nothing really he can do. Maybe you could argue that he could command his box a little bit more, but I think that, we've got some big lads in central defence there that should have been wise to what Mickey van der Ven was doing in that box to score 2 goals. So for me, there was nothing really that Jordan Pickford could do. He made a good save, and arguably it should have been more, but for Jordan Pickford. So I'll give him a 6, and that's kind of the starting position. It kind of goes downhill from there, really. But moving into the back four now, we'll start with Jake O'Brien at right back, and I'm going to give Jake O'Brien a 5. Listen, he was unlucky not to get his goal, and I think that would have bumped his rating up a little bit. But he just struggled against Mohamed Kudus. I'll try not to be too harsh on Jake O'Brien, considering he is a centre half playing at right back. But when playing against the likes of, Mohamed Kudus, we've seen him against Savinho, for example. These are really tricky wingers and wingers that are going to turn him inside out. We saw it last season in the Merseyside derby when he was playing Luis Diaz. These are games where he is going to struggle playing against these type of wingers. And again, it's not for the want of trying with Jake O'Brien. I think he is. Obviously, we know he's a natural centre half. So if you were to play him in centre half in his natural position, I think his performance levels would go up tenfold. But yeah, as we see week in, week out now, he is getting found out a little bit by these tricky wingers. And he really struggled against Mohamed Kudus, in my opinion. But that being said, obviously, as I said before, with the goal, he was unlucky to get that chalked off. I'm not too sure on the refereeing decision. I think there is obviously an argument to suggest that there is interference from Iliman and Jai on the line. But yeah, again, this is the player ratings. I'm not going to bore you about talking about refereeing decisions because that's not what we're here for. But moving into the two centre halves now, I'm going to give both James Tarkowski and Michael Keane a 5.5. I don't think they did anything wrong as such, but those goals are really easily avoided, in my opinion. You can't give Mickey van der Ven the time and space in the box to win those headers and get free headers into the south stand net. You just can't let that happen at this level, and rightly so. We were punished by Tottenham because the aerial ability that we have, we should be doing a lot better in terms of defending those set pieces. So for me, that you can't really separate them in terms of performance levels, Keane or Tarkowski. So I'm going to give them a 5.5. I don't think they're worthy of a 6, purely because we just did concede 3 on the day. So I think a 5.5 is maybe even a little bit too positive for them. But moving to the left back now, and this is probably where it gets to the bottom of the ratings. I'm going to give Mykolenko a 3.5. He was really, really poor, in my opinion. Mykolenko struggled to make any meaningful passes. Going forward, he looked all at sea. His positional sense was really, really poor. And in my opinion, I think we're not getting the best out of Jack Grealish because we've got Mykolenko behind him. There was one instance where Mykolenko bombed forward towards the striker's position, and it meant that Jack Grealish had to actually go back and cover where Mykolenko had left a big gap. So for me, the positional sense for Vitaly Mykolenko just isn't there at the moment. And again, it's something that we've not seen for a while because I've always maintained the view that Vitaly Mykolenko is a decent, solid Premier League defensive fullback. Going forward, we know he's very limited. But at the moment, he can't even seem to do that very well. So again, would I like to see him maybe have a spell out the team? I think last season, it was about this time last season as well, where I was calling for him to have a spell out the team, and I think this season's no different. Maybe James Garner could do a little bit of a better job at left back, and that would see us get the best out of Jack Grealish ahead of him, or even just give Adam Asner a go. I know we've not seen a lot of him, and he's only been playing youth under 21s football, but something has to change, something has to give with Mykolenko, and you might disagree. You might think he had a decent game. You might think 3.5 is too harsh, but I think a 3.5 for Mykolenko is probably about right because I did think he had a really, really poor game. But moving into the midfield now, we'll start with Idrissa Gana Gueye, and I'm going to give him a 5.5. Again, this one is less about his output on the pitch and what he was actually doing, what he was actually trying. But I think he just looked leggy. But again, he's mid to late 30s. We shouldn't be expecting him to play week in, week out in the Premier League. It's his body's going to take a toll, really. So again, I think maybe 5.5 is probably fair for Idrissa Gana Gueye. He tried to create some things. He was tireless off the ball, but it just didn't really work out for him really. And on the ball at times he was a little bit shabby with his passing. So 5.5 for Idrissa Gana for me, and definitely room for improvement there. And then to his centre mid partner is James Garner. I'm going to give him a 6. He was slightly better than Idrissa Gana. I think it was a tireless performance, but again he struggled to create chances. And at times where you need your midfielders to put in defense splitting passes. And we know that James Garner can do that. We saw it last season in, for example, the Leicester game where one defense splitting pass in behind to Beto and the ball was in the back of the net. But James Garner's struggling really to get that chance creation that we know that he has the ability to do. So for me, a 6 for James Garner, a little bit better than just a Garner Gay. And then moving to Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, who played at attacking midfield. I'm going to give him a 5.5. Now, this is a weird one, really. I think it was a bit of a weird performance from Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. Not something that we've seen since his move from Chelsea to Everton. He struggled really to create anything of note, and that's something that I didn't expect to say about Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. I think he's been fantastic since he's come in, but he looked a little bit off the pace, a little bit lackluster against Spurs. He was struggling really to you know, put in quick passes to get to our fullbacks or get to the wingers. And in a time where you need to catch Spurs napping, and there were gaps showing towards the end of that game where, we had the opportunity to get one back. And again, there just wasn't enough conviction on the passes to really find our wingers or our fullbacks. So for me, Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, I think a 5.5 is fair, but only because I think he sets himself high standards, and we know that we can get a little bit more out of him. But I think a 5.5 is probably fair for that Spurs performance. And then moving into the front three now, we'll start with Iliman and Jai off the right hand side. I think he was. I'm going to give him a 6 because I think he was class on the ball. I think at times he got us out of a lot of dangerous situations where he could just wriggle out from whether it be Jed Spence or Rodrigo Bentancur. There was plenty of times where Iliman and Jai really gave them the run around, and he was running rings around them. So I'm going to be fair on Iliman and Jai and give him a 6. Probably unlucky not to score. There was a chance. I think he clipped it over to Jack Grealish for a good volley, and there was a couple of chances maybe that he could have squared it or found a better pass. But for me, Iliman Jai probably deserves a 6. And then moving to the other side as well, I'll give Jack Grealish a 6 as well. Not really his greatest performance. He's not, it wasn't the fiery Jack Grealish that we've seen in previous weeks, but you can see the quality he has on the ball. And every time he gets the ball, something could happen. And I think we saw it maybe in the first few games of the season where he was dragging the players up around him. Maybe that novelty's worn off a little bit. But with Jack Grealish, he's just an absolute class act, and every time he gets the ball, something could happen. So, not his greatest performance against Spurs, but one definitely to build on, and fingers crossed he can do a little bit better on Monday Night Football against Sunderland away from home. And then moving to the striker now. This again, you're going to probably branch this and bracket this one in the Mykolenko territory. It's Beto, and I'm going to give him a 4.5. Now, viewers will know that I do like Beto. I'm maybe a little bit more generous on Beto than maybe I was on Calvert-Lewin last season sometimes. But with Beto, I think it was a really poor performance against Spurs. Hold-up play was really poor. He didn't give the midfield or the defence any respite from the ball coming back towards them from the Spurs attack. And he should score one of those chances, in my opinion. There was one where it sort of looped to the back post, and if he chucks himself at it, instead of it, squirming behind for a corner, if he chucks himself at it, the 9 times out of 10, the ball is going to find the back of the net there for Beto. And then also there's a couple of other chances. He was obviously unlucky not to score the overhead kick, which was a great save from Vicario, but one of those chances for me, a top striker in the Premier League does score those. So for me, I think maybe we have to maybe chop and change it now with Tieno Barry. But for me, Beto, it's a 4.5 and not his greatest performance in Everton blue. But moving to the subs now, and we were just talking about Tieno Barry there. I'm actually going to give Tieno Barry a 6. Now, some people might say this is a little bit too positive. Obviously, coming onto the pitch in very difficult circumstances, pretty thankless circumstances, really. But I was actually quite impressed with his hold-up play. But for a little bit of a lack of sharpness to latch onto a through ball, he would have had a chance one-on-one on goal on Vicario. But I thought his hold-up play was pretty consistent. It was pretty good for the little cameo that he had on the pitch. For me, I do think it will come with Tieno Barry. We just need to give him time. One thing that I've sort of read and some things that I've said on various social medias this week is that I'd compare him to Kevin Schade at Brentford, and obviously we saw what he did to Liverpool over the weekend. Kevin Schade is one of those players that struggled coming from the Bundesliga, and he really needed time to adapt before he started to flourish in a Brentford shirt. I think Thierry Barry is going to be very similar to that. I think he's going to need maybe a season to really bed into the Premier League, get up to the speed of things. But you can see that the ability is there. I think he's got all the attributes. He's quick. He's got a big frame. He can put himself about. He's good in the air. I do think he has the attributes to really put in decent shifts for Everton and really be a top player for us. But I just think we need to give him time. He's still young. He's still learning his trade. It's his first season in an elite division like the Premier League, so I think we do just need to give him time. But yeah, I'm going to give him a six for that one because I think there was characteristics there which were positive, but also there's things definitely to work on. But moving to Merlin Roll now, and a similar sort of situation for him, I'm going to give him a six. I think it was another impressive cameo for him. I think I'd now like to see him start in a game, whether that be at Sunderland or the Fulham game the week after. I would like to see Merlin Rowe get a chance from the beginning and maybe take out Idrissa Gana Gueye and see what happens, just to give him a little bit of a rest. But Merlin Rowe, I think he looks tidy on the ball. He was unlucky not to maybe put his headed chance on target to really test Vicario. Obviously, he ballooned that over into the south stand. But again, as I said before, it was another impressive cameo from Merlin Rowe, and I'd like to see him get a little bit more minutes now. Obviously, coming back from injury. Which again was disappointing to see him get that injury the week after he actually signed for the club on deadline day. It was disappointing to see him get that injury, but now he's got a chance to really stake his claim in the side, and I'd like to see him get that start from the beginning. But finally, now it was Carlos Alcaraz that came on with about 4 or 5 minutes to play, and I do think it's probably unfair to rate Carlos Alcaraz. It was pretty thankless circumstances, similar to the other two, but they got a little bit longer. It was the game was done and dusted by the time Carlos Alcaraz came on, and he couldn't really affect anything at all. So I'm not going to rate Carlos Alcaraz. I think it's probably unfair to do so. But that is the player ratings for Everton nil, Tottenham Hotspur 3. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about these player ratings. Do you think I was too harsh? Do you think I was too generous on some people? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Obviously, as we tick over now towards a very difficult Monday night football against third in the Premier League, Sunderland. Again, I think we're going to have to be on top form up at the Stadium of Light to try and get a result there. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. But that is all from me today. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.